A military coup just happened in Bolivia only weeks after the president won re-election. Now, a fascist theocrat is trying to take over. Washington's fingerprints are all over this. Here's how it went down. On October 20th, Bolivians went to the polls to choose between President Evo Morales and Carlos Mesa, a multi-millionaire businessman who has close ties to the US government. Morales has won 3 consecutive elections in landslides. While his detractors claim it's illegal to run for a 4th term, the Bolivian Supreme Court, whose judges, unlike in the US, are elected, had ruled it constitutionally legal. Bolivia has an odd vote counting system. There's an unofficial quick count done so the media can report to the public, and there's an official count that's far more important because it's legally binding. This 2-count system, as strange as it is, was implemented on recommendation by the Organization of American States, a Cold War-era group that has a history of overturning elections like in Haiti and supporting the worst human rights violators as long as they're in line with Washington, like Chile's right-wing president Sebastián Piñera. Like many countries, Bolivia has a 2-round system. To win the election, a candidate has to receive 50% of the votes or win by a 10-point margin. If neither happens, it goes to a second round of voting. As the quick count was coming in, Mesa began falsely declaring he had enough votes to make it to the second round. The Trump administration's neo-colonial governor of Latin America, Marco Rubio, hyped up Mesa's bogus claim, saying that Morales failed to secure a necessary margin to avoid second round in presidential election, and that he would tamper with votes. When the quick count had reached 83%, the Electoral Authority in Bolivia held a press conference announcing the incumbent socialist president Evo Morales had received 45.7% and US-backed opposition candidate Carlos Mesa had 37.84%, less than the 10% Morales needed to secure outright victory. The electoral authorities then stopped reporting the quick vote count, which is consistent with what they've done in past elections. In 2017, they stopped the quick vote count at 80%, and the OAS praised it as, quote, an exemplary day on which the popular will was expressed freely and peacefully during the elections. Mesa, intent on winning by hook or by crook, called on his supporters to go to the streets.
Quiero alertar a todos ustedes y a nuestros conciudadanos de comunidad ciudadana estar alertas en vigilias en todo el país hasta que este recuento se reinicie sin manipulación.
But unlike previous times, the OAS mounted a pressure campaign to compel the electoral authorities to restart the count, instantly manufacturing an atmosphere of distrust in the electoral process and putting their fingers on the scales in favor of Washington's candidate. That tornadoed into a full-on disinformation campaign as mainstream media outlets parroted the manufactured claims without any skepticism. Under intense pressure, the electoral authorities restarted the process. At 95%, the quick count showed Morales had 47.1% and Mesa had 36.5%. Morales had slightly more than the 10% margin that would secure victory over Mesa if confirmed by the legally binding official vote count. After the latest figures were released, just as the OAS had called for, it put out a statement alleging an inexplicable change in trend that drastically modifies the fate of the election. But that change was consistent with expectations as votes from Morales' rural base of support came in later. Then, the official count was finally released, corroborating the vote tallies from the quick count and clearly showing the winner was Evo Morales with 47.08% of the votes, compared to Carlos Mesa's 36.51%. That's outright victory. Nonetheless, Washington ramped up its disinformation campaign aimed at overturning the results and accused the electoral authority of subverting democracy. With a bogus narrative that the election was illegitimate in full swing, mobs of far-right opposition supporters took to the streets and began attacking supporters of the ruling Socialist Party. Some even burned ballot boxes. The most prominent figure in the opposition street protests is Luis Camacho, an ultra-right oligarch and leader of a fascist paramilitary group whose members perform Nazi-style salutes. His family owns Sergas, the company that distributed natural gas until Morales nationalized the hydrocarbon industry in 2006 and he's accused of evading at least $20 million in taxes. Meanwhile, the Morales government invited the OAS to audit the electoral process. The OAS insisted its findings would be binding, despite it having no legal authority to do so. Mesa's camp agreed with the OAS, saying, quote, "The audit must be complete." Morales agreed too, confident that it won in a clean election. After Morales agreed, Mesa backtracked and rejected the audit that he had just agreed to. At some point, the quote from the Mesa camp showing they agreed to the audit was scrubbed from the original Reuters article. It's still visible in the Google description for the article and in a republished version. This is scandalous. Meanwhile, Evo Morales warned against a coup with outside support.
He convocado esta conferencia para denunciar ante el pueblo boliviano y al mundo entero. Está en proceso un golpe de Estado.
For days on end, the opposition hyped up charges of electoral fraud and meted out gruesome violence. They even took the socialist mayor of a town captive, doused her in paint, and dragged her through the streets. The State Department poured gas on the fire, amping up the false claim of irregularities in the vote counting process.
The United States strongly supports the October 23rd OAS Observer Report that reveal a number of irregularities that need to be addressed.
On Sunday, after weeks of bloody violence, the OAS released its audit, cast heavy doubt on the electoral process, though it provided almost no evidence to back its bold claims. The report ended with a call for new elections, finally rejecting the voting process it had driven into the ground. Mike Pompeo welcomed the report, echoing the call for new elections. To his credit, Evo Morales kept his promise to respect the outcome of the audit and agreed to new elections too. But it was too late. The propaganda campaign of an illegitimate election had succeeded and the knives were out. Calls for Morales to resign mounted, and a top military official called for him to step down, cementing the coup. Members of Morales' cabinet were kidnapped, opposition mobs rampaged through the streets, and the ousted president's house was ransacked as he attempted to flee the country under threat of arrest, possibly worse. The OAS and the US government, which only hours before had called for new elections, fell silent as Bolivia burned. As the coup took place, Luis Camacho entered the presidential palace and placed the Bible on the national seal.
Ahora, 15 minutos después de que dejamos la Biblia abierta en la palabra que a mí me salió ese día, que Dios tenía que volver a palacio, me di cuenta de que teníamos que llevarla. Yo sabía y tenía fe, pero tenía un compromiso con Dios de guardar ese secreto entre los dos hasta que el presidente Morales renuncie a su presidencia.
On Monday, the Trump administration broke its silence and released a statement praising the military coup as a significant moment for democracy. In the end, the far-right opposition, its partners in Washington, and the OAS managed to transform a legitimate democratic election into a bloody coup. Unless it's reversed, Bolivians can look forward to their country turning into a yard sale for international capital that reverses the massive gains against poverty that Morales oversaw. That's American-style democracy promotion at work.